everybody, welcome to Creative Conversations with David and Donna. I'm David.
And I'm Donna.
This week, something really important to me that I thought about was that I really want to make sure that we keep this podcast on track of what it is, and it's Creative Conversations. We just want to talk about all things creativity and interesting conversations and art and all that sort of stuff. And well, what comes to mind for me right now, because we were discussing what are we going to talk about, and Donna said, well, what's on your mind? So Donna, I'm gonna throw a little curveball at you. I saw It Chapter 2.
Oh my God,
this
Amelia
past
wants
week.
to see that. Amelia's my daughter. She wants to see it so bad.
Have you seen It Chapter 2? Have you seen It?
No.
Did you see the 2017
It?
It?
Not my thing.
Did you see the 1990s
The old
movie
one?
series?
I don't think I did. Horror is not in my wheelhouse.
But are you aware of what it is?
I am very aware
What
of what
it is.
I am aware of what it is. In fact, there's a story about that I'll come back to, so go ahead.
Well, It is it's a Stephen King novel. Written by Stephen King, hence Stephen King novel.
There you go.
Called It, and there was a movie series about it made 29 years ago now. Very, very popular. It became part of pop culture instantly. Tim Curry, I think his name is Tim Curry. Tim Curry's It, terrifying. Always loved it. And then in 2017, they made another movie, which interestingly, in 2017 when they made It, the new one, that was 27 years after the movie series came out.
Oh, wow, I didn't realize that.
And, do you know, now are you saying, oh, wow, because the
Yes.
idea is that in the story, it comes back every 27 years.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you add up the dates of when they were released, when that one was released, it was September something 2017, and when you add up all those numbers, it equals 27, and then same thing for when it was released. If you add up all the numbers and the date for when it was released this year, It Chapter 2 equals 27. Just cool stuff there. But
I'm
I
sure
saw
it was not by accident.
It was not by accident, I'm sure. But that's really cool stuff. And I saw It Chapter 2, and I had not seen It Chapter 1 or the movie series. I was aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I have never seen the movies, though. But I went and saw it, and I loved it. And I have not been able to stop consuming media on it. All the videos I can find about it. And the reason I love it and what I want to talk about, why I bring it up, is because it is so freaking weird. It is bizarre. And I love film, and I love art, and I love seeing what artists can do. What's the weirdest, newest, craziest thing artists can do. I don't like seeing big franchise movies. I like, or reading big franchise novels or something like that. I want to, find the weird, obscure stuff and see what's getting done over there. And so that's why I bring it up, because it's so freaking weird. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, about unique movies and how to stay unique in your own art and not become all the franchises and the mainstream. But the problem being that 9 times out of 10, what's gonna make the money is that mainstream stuff. So how far do you go and making your own unique thing while also sticking to what this franchise needs it to be?
Well, here is my question. Without spoiler alerts, obviously. What was so weird about it?
Okay. It was so... Because the idea of It is he is a shapeshifter.
Okay.
So the clown, Pennywise the clown, becomes many different things.
Right.
And it's all about imagination, and I think that's really great. And Stephen King, when in his novel he did this. In the novel, he would often turn into 50s horror movie monsters, but now that's been updated a bit, so it's even more bizarre stuff. Not to say where it comes in, but there's a part where somebody opens a fortune cookie and a spider crawls out, but the spider grows a little head, and it's the head of a baby, and it starts crying and twisting. It's what the heck is this? I was laughing. It's supposed to be a scary moment. I was laughing because I'm what the heck is happening?
Like a bad dream.
Exactly, and it's just this weird thing that somebody had a vision of and put it on screen. Mm-hmm. And that's what's really interesting to talk about to me is artists having these weird visions and making it come to life. And that's what we're all about, is having your vision and making it come to life. But that vision is freaking weird.
That's a pretty weird
So
vision.
how do you... Yeah, just crazy stuff like that. Giant spiders and lepers and yeah, oh my, exactly. Just the strangest things. Giant old lady who morphs into a running like a really tall, just really tall zombie with just I need to realize we're on a podcast,
Yes,
so they can't see what I'm doing.
arms.
Flailing their arms, like, so bizarre. I haven't seen that in a movie, and so things like that in a movie, because I watch, like, franchise movies, and I'm kind of bored with them, so...
Yeah.
I think I've been trying to find more stuff like that.
I love it. Well, do you know, you've been watching a lot of media, what are some other similar films?
Similar films?
I mean, with that explore the edge, the crazy...
That explore the edge and the crazy... Well, I love, like, really crappy horror movies. I don't like horror movies that are actually scary, like the because jump scares scare me, but they're cheap and I hate them.
Mm.
But they do scare me. I like the ones where it's like, this is really gross. Oh my god, you're doing this? I love the Saw films.
No.
Not because I like gore, but I'm like, somebody thought of that. And put it on a screen and made it happen. This is so weird.
I guess. I mean, I don't have anything against them. I just don't want to watch them. That's not my thing at all. At all.
Well, you're missing out,
yeah,
Donna.
I guess. Yeah.
And this movie isn't very scary, but it's just... And also, I do love the lore. Like, what I really like is the whole lore behind it about Manchurin, the turtle who vomited up the world. All of Stephen King's novels take place in this universe he's created, where it's this turtle named Manchurin had a stomach ache and vomited up the universe. So now we're there. That's what we live in. And it's all connected to that. All of his novels are. They take place in this little universe.
How did you learn that? I've never heard that before.
Well, just by watching like educational quote-unquote videos about the lore and history of Pennywise and you know, what actually happened in the... Because that's what happened in the novel. They explained it in the novel, but they don't go into that in the movie. And it's Maturin also shows up in the Dark Tower books by Stephen King, and a bunch of other references all throughout his stuff. But that's really cool too, because it's this bizarre little universe that he's created that has so many strange things that all came out of his mind,
and they all relate to ours enough to where we can watch it and feel like it could happen in our
It could,
universe.
like, what if we are walking around on a turtle's back? Because he vomited us up and then threw us on his back to hang out. Yeah. Also, by the way, he was snorting a lot of when he wrote this. When he wrote these books, lots of cocaine. He has said
all the books or just the story? The turtle story.
At least it. I know for Stephen King has openly said, yes, when I was writing it, I was high the entire time.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So that's what we're telling you, David and Donna. If you want to write a creative story, snort cocaine.
I was hoping you would not say that. That is absolutely not what we're saying. I mean, you know, each to his own and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I feel like you can be creative without assistance. But again, each to his own. We are not. We are neither encouraging it nor denying it. It is whatever works for you, I suppose.
I have never done drugs.
I'm so glad to know that.
I just want you to know that.
And I haven't either. So.
As a mentor figure, I want you to know that like you don't need to be disappointed or have a talk with me. Like
no, I'm good. I think it's more the people listening. I have lots of friends that do plenty of drugs. I mean, it's not a big deal to me. I just don't feel like it is a necessity for creativity.
That's what's really that brings up a thing. Like a whole lot of people attribute a lot of their stuff. Like, well, I was kind of had writer's block, so I did these drugs, and here, like I just said, Stephen King wrote it on that. Mm-hmm. Do you think that he would have? It would not be the same novel.
Good point.
Maybe the same story would have come out, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same novel.
I hear you.
Would he have thought about Manchurin the giant turtle throwing up the universe if it wasn't for that?
I've never had that thought in my mind.
Something to think about. We don't got to go into it right now, but
yeah.
Also, I really want to talk about it because I'm just loving learning about this universe. I love learning about weird universes. And last week we talked a lot about Star Trek and that all the lore behind that, and Lord of the Rings. And I'm so invested in these universes that have this lore, these things that have nothing to do with the story. You don't have to know anything about Manchurin the turtle to watch those movies. But
if you do,
if you do, it's so cool. Same thing with Star Trek. You don't have to know all of the lore of that show to enjoy the episode, but if you know all of it, it's super cool. And same thing with Lord of the Rings. If you don't have to know these things, but it exists. Somebody thought about putting it out there, like George R.R. Martin with the Game of Thrones series. He has coffee table books that are just full of information. He has whole history novels. He has written history textbooks from the perspective of a historian in that world, and I've read them, and they're amazing. But it's so like incredible. Like he took the time to think all that out, and I love thinking about that and creating that. And I'd love to create my own universe.
You read my mind. But before we go into that, I do have a story about it, which I said I was going to tell. So you have read the last play I wrote.
Yeah.
And I wrote with Cameron, whose idea it was. But in that particular play that we're getting ready, we're casting now actually. It's called Vlad and Alex. You Can Count on Me, because Vlad is a vampire. And we have a scene where the drama kids have hosted a costume dance, and they've brought in one of their alumni who happens to be a film director, and he's looking for his next. I didn't even realize this. Right, he was looking for his next horror film idea. And the two drama girls, who are just completely overly dramatic in the story, have decided to update it into a musical. And so we have this hilarious scene where I took the scene in the sink where the blood all comes out and the girl's just completely covered in blood, and her dad walks in and doesn't see anything. Mm-hmm. And it was me actually. I transformed that scene into like a poem that could be sung or like at least talked dramatically. So we've at auditions, I told people, I just want you to be as bizarre, out of the box, crazy as you can, because I mean it's the drama kids. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to be silly. And so David, when he was reading it with me, we thought it was interesting. But he's like, "Okay, where's Pennywise?" I'm like, "Well, it's just these two girls." He's like, "Donna, you can't do It the musical without Pennywise." Yeah. I'm like, "Okay, fine." And so, since it's a costume party, we'll just have our costume dance, and we'll just have one of the characters on stage dressed as Pennywise, and they'll ask him to run across at the end going, "Hi, I'm Mr. Clown," or whatever.
Yeah, I'm Pennywise the dancing clown.
Yeah, and he'll just be a walk-through character just to kind of add a little bit
just to say that he's there.
Yeah, so I think it will add a credibility to their It the musical idea, but... Yeah, so It the musical has been in my mind a bit. I had to go back and find a scene to work with. I actually asked my daughter Amelia, I said, "What's a scene from It that kind of people remember that stands out?" And she said, "Well, that one where all the blood comes out of the sink." I'm like, "Well, I don't know it, but I looked it up." And so that was fun. I just wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
So
I think that shows the importance of collaboration.
Oh, no,
Another
certainly.
big theme
yes.
It to me. And no offense, but it seems so obvious. Oh, it's It the musical. Have it.
I know, but I was just trying to keep it simple.
I know.
That's where my head was.
Exactly. But my head wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have been able to come up with a simple scene. I probably would have been like, okay, so what about the scene where he eats Georgie's arm? So we can build a sewer system. I think that's when it runs into the school. What if we hire some guys to build the pipes to come up, and let's actually get a little kid on stage, and he'll have to lose his arm, but,
And I'd be like, "No, David,
that's what you got to do." Exactly.
Can't show that on stage. No.
But you put our two minds together. If we get the simplicity of it's a simple scene to replicate. She's in a bathroom.
Right. We just have to have a sink.
We just have to have a sink, and the blood isn't actually we're not gonna.
Well, the only thing I can think of there is like if we put some red scarves in there, and she just picks them up.
That'd be fun. That'd be hilarious.
Right, and I have a whole bunch of red scarves in the prop room. Right.
I would have thought of that because my head is like. Well, I guess we can use corn syrup and food coloring. It's going to be a mess on the stage.
Yes.
But I wouldn't have thought of that. But you put our minds together, and we get we're doing that scene with that. And then you have my idea of, well, where's the clown?
Yeah.
The part that everybody wants to see. You got to give the audience what they want.
You're right. I really am glad that I read that with you because I would not have thought of it. I mean, maybe somebody in my theater class. Oh, no. That's actually one of the jokes in the play. We have a scene we don't want to tell you what it is, but you're going to love it when you see it. And they just keep emphasizing it. But I do want to say also that you and I do come up with so much together that I would never come up with on my own, and so we can come right back around to what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. So what we were talking about is creating a universe to write in. And so I was going to ask David before he said, I would love to create this on my own. Where would it go for you? How would your universe, what would be the parameters for your universe? Or how would you even start to define that?
Like if I was to
create something similar to what you were describing.
Create my own fantasy universe to set stories in.
Yes.
Well, there's this dwarf named Baldric.
We were just talking about this.
Joke.
It is an inside joke.
But the idea there is that I just had this idea with Donna, and we won't go too far into why we're having this idea quite yet, but this idea where what if we wrote multiple fictional stories, but we set them inside this universe, and they're all narrated by this dwarf named Baldric. And he's like this fun-loving, jolly guy, but...
Ooh! that could be the actual character. Seriously.
Yeah.
And our idea, like, the one that we changed it to.
Yeah.
So he could be in his persona.
Oh.
See what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh. I see exactly what you're saying. That's genius.
Yes, it would work. I love it.
I want everyone to know they have no idea what we're talking about.
Not at all.
But you just witnessed a very special moment.
Yes.
So, actually my universe, and I've talked to you about this a little bit, my fantasy world, where I see there are dragon kin in them, and when dragons ruled the world, all the cities were flying.
Yeah.
Because why not? Because they had magic, so all the cities were in the sky, flying and huge. Like the houses had to be big enough for a dragon, and it just covered the sky like a globe. It's like imagine you have the Earth, but then just a shell around the Earth, like okay, so you have an egg, and the shell of the egg, the white shell, are the dragon's houses, or is the dragon cities, and then the yolk is the Earth, and the Earth, because it was ravaged, it got no sunlight or anything, so it's an apocalypse down there until one day when during the Dragon Civil War, all of the cities started to fall from the sky. The more and more dragons that died, the less and less magic there was in the world, more cities started to fall, and after a long time, the Earth sprouted and was able to grow again, but for a long time it was very dead because of the dragon city. So that'd be like my parameters. And what created the world? Well, I'd actually love to go into that. And I think before I read about all this stuff Stephen King came up with, I was like, I don't care about that. But now I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. Because it's called the Macroverse. This place that exists out of space and time, where there's the other, and he creates the Deadlights, which is it. It is actually, the Deadlights is what it's called. It's 3 lights. That's his form. And then there's Mature and the Turtle. And they roam the universe. They've been there for millions and millions and millions of years.
Where time doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Right.
Time doesn't exist. It's like, and Pennywise has been on Earth for millions and millions of years. He was there before. But I think that the idea is that he was actually the meteor that destroyed the dinosaurs because he crashed into dairy.
Oh wow!
I think that's. I don't quote me on that.
Well, even if it's not, that's an idea right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm like, wow, what would my universe be? Well, what if I have a talking raccoon or something? I don't know, like just a raccoon that's out there.
So anyone who has been in my theater class for the last 3 years. Ziplopo.
Oh yes, I didn't even think about Ziplopo.
So for just a very brief synopsis here, I had a student who won, and I hesitate to say it this way, but a toy frilled lizard, which is one of those beaded kind of rubber animals, like you could squeeze it. You know, it's not a hard plastic thing. It's
won it at an arcade.
And on the way from where he won it, which was at Mr. Gaddy's, back to the school, he literally had this vision of how this is the avatar of the true creator of all things, which is named Ziplopo and is a magical frilled lizard. And he created an entire lore about the creation story and everything. And he has even gone into details about Ziplopo's father, who was Todola, who I think is very important as well. So for the last, not this year, but the 3 years before this year, Dean is the student's name. He would draw Ziplopo all over my board. And just as a quick side note, Dean visited me last week at school and drew Ziplopo on my board. And
is he still there?
He is. So when my students came in the next day, the ones who had me the year before, like, oh no, it's back.
He's back.
He's back. So it's just, we've actually had someone create well, I guess the point I was making there, because I kind of got off sidetracked there, but something as simple as a toy won at an arcade just created or sparked this whole idea. And I mean, the way Dean describes it, it's like he was just on the way back, and it just, like the sunlight that's shone on him, whoa, you know, the idea came, and we actually incorporated that character, Ziplopo, as kind of the item that was worshipped in something that was a cult but not a cult in our story that we just found out was going to be published, a Pelican story, which we're going to name The Patriotic Pelican in publication. So the idea has gone from just, this is what I think, to let me write it all out because it's my inspiration, to, hey, let's use this, and it's kind of a drama insider. It's in a play that's going to be published, but it's an insider drama joke too, and it's just so much fun to see where it goes.
Ziplopo is being published.
Yes, Ziplopo is being published.
Ziplopo is going to be that's amazing.
And Dean actually wrote a song, and our
Ziplopo.
Yeah.
I don't remember the lyrics.
We don't either. But
magical.
my co-teacher, who is in charge of tech, is also the choir teacher. teacher, so she wrote the music for it, and so now we'll have a published song, original song, and a character in a play based on just a character, or I should say a toy, one at Gaddy's.
At a random pizza buffet.
Right, on a field trip.
For
creative writing! It was a creative writing.
in South Louisiana.
Yes.
This is nobody, who would have known?
Right.
Like, that's just so weird, because what if the guy who made Mr. Gaddy's never made Mr. Gaddy's?
I hear
then
that.
Then the play wouldn't have been the same.
No, it would not have.
Life is so weird.
It is. There are so many stories about Ziplapa. We'll have to bring that back occasionally.
We'll have to bring Dean on here just to tell the story.
Yes,
what if we do a whole web series about Ziplapa?
We should do that.
The history of him.
Yes.
My favorite thing to do, I love doing this, is talking about fictional history, like it's real history.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love talking about the history of A Song of Ice and Fire like it's a real thing. Like, I always say that I study it like a textbook. Like, in the same way a college professor could talk about history, I like to talk about lore of these other worlds.
Okay, but didn't he, what's his name again? The author?
George R. Martin.
George R. I mean, he did the book like that,
Mm-hmm,
right?
yeah.
So you like to also...
Yeah, I study it like it's an actual textbook, and I read and talk about it in history with other people who know it, so it's like, oh, yes, well, he was a fine king, and too bad that happened. I can't wait to see what will happen in the future. You know, I wonder how Bran is going to do, and what are his tax policies. You know, something really interesting, just fun side note, because we always talk about Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
George R. R. Martin, he has a very realistic take on fantasy. Very low magic, and very, like, he gets into the politics of it all. And he has said that one of his inspirations for how he wants to write novels is, yes, I like Lord of the Rings, and Aragorn's going to be a great king, but what's his tax policy? Which is something you never think about,
right.
And that's how he tries to write. So he took something that was real, and he put his little spin on it of, like, what's his tax policy?
So it's more of an alternate universe, really, than a true fantasy that couldn't ever be.
Right. Well, there is that, because there are dragons, and there is a lot of lore to it. It takes place on, like, another world and with the country of Westeros. But yes, it is very. It does parallel us a lot, where it's like, if you take out the very minor fantasy elements, you could talk about the story like it's history, like it happened in medieval times. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So yes, it's like a parallel universe in a way like that, where it's a lot more realistic. And
so your world, is it, other than the dragons, is it something that could have actually occurred? The world you created. I mean, I guess the dragons are such a huge part that really not.
No, I wouldn't say so. Just because the lore I have afterwards. Well, I guess so, because it's about kings and power struggles in that way, and families who take over, and the different dynasties.
Okay.
But
so kind of based on our actual history, but with the element of the dragons.
It is. It is taken from the history of, like, well, there's kings and knights, which even Tolkien, it's like. The idea of kings came from this medieval time, and having kings of these countries who have armies of knights on horses, and putting history in fantasy. And that's what fantasy is so interesting as a genre, because fantasy actually is based in very real things. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, well, what if there was magic in this history of time? When you talk about fantasy, 9 times out of 10 you're talking about, like, really you're talking about medieval times fantasy. Mm-hmm. So that begs the question, is Star Wars a fantasy or is it a sci-fi?
No, see, the difference between those two is something that I don't care about. If
really?
I like the story, I don't care what it's called. People just quibble about junk, and I don't think it matters at all. And I have always, all my entire life, enjoyed science fiction and fantasy, and I don't care what it's called. I
think that's the right answer to the question I just asked.
Yeah, that's so minor, but I do have a really interesting thing for us to ponder creatively.
Please.
Let's throw something besides dragons either into our history or pull something out of our history and talk about how that would be a good story. So, for example, a dragon is a magical, mythical creature with this great power. And so much has been written about it that there are people who will argue that they actually have existed. I mean, they're in every civilization's lore. So it's very interesting to think about that. But let's say, for example, that we pulled out a concept like there's never been a king, or how about in the history of human beings there was never ownership? Like, people never cared who owned anything. They just always existed together, and there was never the struggle for how much you could own. So it kind of takes away the power struggle and the whole... So how could we create a story around just that concept, even based on real history? I don't know if we could base it on real history.
Now, how could we create a story, or how would that affect actual...
I think it would be nice to... Okay, maybe we could imagine a world based on the history that we know, but then those people in that time didn't care about who owned things. Is that just is it so pervasive that we couldn't even do it? Would we have to create our own society, kind of like these fantasy stories like The Giver and the, what's the one we were talking about in class the other day? Something similar to that, where like everything's so different. I mean, it just is so unique that it
becomes a fantasy, even though there's not dragons in it. It still becomes a fantasy because it's so different. I wouldn't say that it would have to be like that, because as long as we're not introducing magic or anything. But
all right, so let's take a time period. Let's say, well, we could say medieval times, because to me ownership was huge. I mean, people fought wars over.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about like that, like old times, like. At the time when people would start saying, I was even thinking like caveman, who's like, this is my rock.
Yeah, right, yeah.
This doesn't exist. People just don't think like that.
There's no ownership. So how, okay, well, I don't know if we could base a story on our past, because that is it is a basis for so much of what we've done in our lives. Power struggle. It is what human beings are for us at this point. So if we could create the alternate version of the medieval times where there was no ownership, what would that be like? We would still have rulers, I suppose. Somebody would be in charge of making sure people didn't kill each other, but so much of what people kill each other over there
really?
Right.
Would there really be someone in charge of that? Because what if what is ownership? Maybe they don't own any responsibility either.
Well,
they don't,
so we would
or they
have
feel like they don't own people, or they don't own a throne to say that they're the rulers, or anything. I guess it could be elected officials. They could be like, okay, you've been elected to become the person who takes care of these laws.
So we would be taking care of things, but we wouldn't be owning them. And so, do you feel like that would be like people would work more, like work together more?
They'd probably work together more, but then does everyone just have one big house?
No. Each person would have to have things that you would say that they would be taking care of it. It would be in their stewardship, not in their ownership.
So I feel like what you're actually really getting at is that what if people didn't say they owned land? Okay. So you can own your own house where you live. I don't know if you
even have to own it, though. I think that it that's so hard to tease out. Because
well, you can have your own house, but then what's the difference between have and own?
That's a good question. Because so much of what we base everything on is, I mean, even down to death laws, is like who inherits it, and what do you have to do to pass on what you have accumulated. It's all about accumulating either wealth or power, and then who gets it after, and who fights to have it, and God, just that one concept, I don't know. I honestly think it would almost have to be an alternate universe type fantasy book.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be
I don't know if we could even base it on our history, because our history is absolutely about I own this house. I don't know. I've read about this concept, and I'm very interested in how it would be something we could carry out as a human species, because I really do feel like it would change our entire dynamic. It would be like we were all stewards of the whole earth. Better? Yes, I do, because people wouldn't be constantly fighting for I own this, or you have to give it to me because it was mine, and it would just be people would share everything they had with everybody all the time, and
I don't know.
You just can't imagine not owning it.
Well, I really like my phone.
Well, but
does it get to not be my phone anymore? I feel like a lot of the concepts you throw at me, they would be better, but here's what I'm imagining. Right. Nobody owns anything, and we're all living happily and peacefully amongst each other. But I would also imagine us all wearing loincloths and living in a jungle with tree houses.
Let's think about
because we don't progress.
Okay, let's take it to the creative level then. Okay. There is a person who loves to create beautiful clothes, but that person has no idea how to, make a phone or even how to build a house. So it'd be like a barter. Like, I can create beautiful clothes for you. You can cook wonderful food. You can build things. And if we all contributed our gifts to each other all the time, there would be no need for ownership. It would just be like, I made this because I love making clothes, and you can have this. And then I made this because this is my gift to the world, and so I'm going to give it to you. And if we all gave freely of our gifts to each other, I feel like we would have something there. Like we would be able to meet each other's needs without all the power struggle and the pain that comes from that.
Let me ask you there'd be no conflict then.
I'm not saying there wouldn't be conflict.
Well,
I just think
what would the conflict be over?
Well, that's a good question.
Because my next question is, if you wrote a story about this, would this story be interesting in any way?
Well,
and I don't mean that offensively.
I totally understand what you're saying. So our idea of a good story is that you have a good villain,
you have a good
and
conflict,
a good conflict
something
to resolve,
for the story to be about.
To resolve. So the conflict that would have to be solved would not be based on a power struggle or a ownership struggle. So what other types of conflict would there be? Maybe the conflict would be something like a natural occurrence, like the big hurricane makes it to where, all of the things that you use to create your gift, whether it's clothes or food or shelter or whatever, and then you have to work together to overcome it. So it would be like a shared problem, right? It's not like I hate you because you took this from me kind of thing.
I guess the story would be, if we're all working together like that, look at how easy we could overcome a hurricane.
Or anything.
And how do we overcome this hurricane?
By working together.
By working together.
I mean, you see it as boring.
I don't necessarily see it as boring. I think you're right that everything we do is so based around that conflict of it's based around conflict that I can't imagine a story not having conflict. Can you name a story that doesn't have conflict?
Well, I mean, not that's popular.
Do you know of any though? Even personally, I cannot. I mean, I'm trying to think of like one thing that doesn't have a conflict.
I don't know if I can think of a fiction book, but nonfiction that I read has a lot to do with ways that human beings can live in peace, and specifically one of them would be if we didn't insist that we had to own things,
But then I ask you this: so we're sitting around your office right now.
Right.
Do you still have that computer, or do you not get to have it because you don't own anything?
That's
what about
I'm saying.
The child in Africa who needs a computer?
I hear you. But what I'm trying to say is I feel like, that's funny, we were just looking at our computer and it just went black. It knows we're talking about it. The idea would be that if everyone was able to create what they're put on earth to create, which I really truly believe everybody has some gift to contribute, that if everyone was able to do that and was able to help each other achieve that, like there would be someone who enjoyed crafting the fabric. There would be someone who enjoyed changing the fabric into clothing. There would be someone who enjoyed helping someone choose the right clothes for how they want to look. So all of that, if we all contributed what we had to offer and then shared it freely with each other or bartered back and forth for it instead of owning it, it would be like, you can use this if you can provide this for me. And I feel like there could be a place where there's no ownership. But I'm sure that conflict would arise, and I'm trying to decide because our brains are just so patterned for violence. We come on this earth and we know that there's violence over everything. I mean, I work in a high school. People will fight over like, did you eat my last tater tot? I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's in the way we were raised. But if we were raised to where we all just work together to overcome problems, I mean, I'm sure there would be problems to overcome. It would just be such a different type of conflict. So, the idea of the kind of stories that we write now appealing to that type of a society, it is so different that I don't know if we could have I mean, it would have to be a story. I really do think it would be a story about working together to overcome something that's out of their control, right?
Right. It'd have to be, but then I still don't. Because, okay, for example, so The Walking Dead.
Yes.
Is a show I'm a very big fan of, and if you don't watch it because they killed Glenn 3 seasons ago, get over it. I'm so terribly sorry that they killed a character. Guess what? Characters die all the frickin' time. I liked Glenn too. That's how it happened in the comic books. Like, just get over it. It's like, I hated the death, but that's good. That's the point. Exactly. You're supposed to be mad at Negan.
Have a reaction.
He's the bad guy.
Yes.
He did a bad thing. I think Walking Dead gets such a bad rap, and I love that show. It's great, and I get maybe it was kind of slow in season 7. Point is, season 9 was great. Watch it; it's on Netflix now. Anyway, The Walking Dead.
Okay.
What's happened is a zombie apocalypse has occurred.
Correct.
But now we're 9 seasons in. Zombies ain't a freaking problem. By season 3, they were like taking out the zombies. Like they saw them, like dead, no problem, because they figure out how to deal with it, right? So the real conflict and the real interesting problem that gets presented is the conflict between humans. That's what ends up driving it. So even in this world where this big apocalyptic, I would call a zombie apocalypse a natural disaster in a way. It's like a hurricane, a giant hurricane. The zombie apocalypse has killed everything. That is the conflict that all the humans should be fighting against. Still, the conflict of the show and the comic books is humans and how they fight with each other in this post-apocalyptic world. So in the story that you're talking about, let's say instead of a hurricane, that it was a zombie apocalypse.
Sure. The zombies come and they interrupt this kind of nirvana society that only relies on each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they deal with the zombies.
I think they would deal with the zombies like that.
Correct. Just like
because in The Walking Dead it took them 3 seasons, and they're still dealing with people. I think in The Walking Dead, if they didn't have to worry about other people, they could just wipe out the freaking zombies. Like,
and then they go back to Nirvana.
So maybe So I guess what I'm getting at is, would your story be interesting?
I hear you.
I think it would be, but for a shorter amount of time than The Walking Dead is interesting. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because The Walking Dead TV show can go on for 9 seasons because the humans are conflicting with each other. But if your story was a TV show, it would end after season 1. Because the humans are not fighting each other. They're working together, and they solve the problem. And the problem solved.
And they go back to working together.
Exactly. And while they're solving the problem, that is interesting because you're seeing these people solving a problem.
Yes.
But they do it so much more efficiently that the problem gets solved so quickly. And now there's no more conflict.
Okay, so in Walking Dead, the conflicts after the zombies are based on the conflicts that we understand because of the society we're raised in.
That are already here. Yeah,
already here. So it could possibly be that stories in a Nirvana-type society would be about how people create and achieve their success. I mean, I think those stories are interesting even now. Because I personally, for years have listened to people talk about what I've done and how I've achieved my dreams, and I guess you are overcoming obstacles. So certainly people in Nirvana world would have to overcome certain issues. Like, for example, the person making the fabric would have to find the right materials, and maybe there would be a struggle to get what they needed, or they would have to search hard to find the right fibers or whatever, or how to learn how to use the loom and weave them together, or whatever the deal is. So there would maybe be conflict in the process. But we are just so conditioned to expect this constant drama in every aspect of our life that I think it is almost impossible to imagine life without it. And that's what I guess the whole point behind that, even though it is from a book that I really think is very important. But the idea is to create a fantasy world based on something that is not there. And so to set the parameters for it, you do have to ask all the questions we're asking and make all the comparisons, and then try to come up with something that hasn't been done the same way. I mean, everybody can tell a story, even if it's been told 30 times. You can still tell it because it's coming from you. It's your voice telling it. And all stories ever told have been told before. It's just a new person telling them. So that's just one example. So maybe we could do another alternate universe where we add something in. So we're not going to add a dragon, but we could add, aliens have been added so many times, but maybe we could add a type of alien that we haven't seen or that we don't know about. So let's think of like the medieval time again. What kind of aliens could come to the medieval time? What powers would they have, or why would they come to the Earth?
And what would make an interesting story? Is that what you're
I just mean we're trying to create an alternate universe. We're throwing something new in. So instead of throwing in dragons, what kind of aliens could we throw in? Where could we go with that?
So they're aliens who look like dragons.
I don't think they're aliens who look like dragons.
I'm kidding.
No, but see, maybe that's where dragons came from. I see right there. That might be. No, seriously though.
What?
That could be an idea for a story. That the dragons really are aliens. And then you could write that story. So that could be the new story.
For
just whatever you're writing.
Oh, just for anything? Yeah. Okay.
See, that's an idea.
It's like, hey man, why does everyone know about I would imagine that story being that it's modern day, and it stars Will Smith, of course, because Will Smith would just be perfect in this movie.
Oh, of course.
I don't know why. I think of Will Smith being like, hey man, what's with all these dragons? And it's like, what are you talking about? And then dragons start attacking, and it's aliens. I thought of Will Smith because of Independence Day and aliens attacking. By the way.
Well, and he's also in what is the one where they hunt down the aliens? I can't say the name of it. The story, the movie series that he's in with Men in Black.
Men in Black.
Yes, so it's kind of a combination.
Exactly. So the dragons start attacking. Like, what the heck? And then it turns out they're aliens. Mm-hmm. And then you learn that, like, all throughout history, these aliens have been visiting Earth.
Mm-hmm. As dragons.
And they're dragons.
This is actually not a bad idea.
But they've been aliens the whole time. Right. And they have their own dragon planet.
I'm serious.
Called Dragon Earth.
Or they live on the inside of the planet.
Oh, but they're not really aliens.
Oh, okay, you're right.
They're not really aliens. What would they be?
Maybe they came from another planet and then inhabited the core of the Earth. And that's how they're they're always in the mountains. They always come up from the caverns because they always live in some mountain, right?
I think it's the planet Godzilla. I think Godzilla lives in a cavern under the sea or something.
Does he really? I don't know anything about Godzilla.
I think he comes from out of the sea and it's like, I'm Godzilla. No. And there's a movie called Pacific Rim where the Pacific Ocean just breaks open and then they have these monsters that come coming out, which terrifies me because what if that's actually what happens? We have no idea.
That's right.
Do you know we know more about space than we know about our oceans?
I do know that.
That is terrifying.
It truly is.
What if we have a story where we all live under the ocean, but up here isn't explored yet? It's like we're all still fish people.
I see.
And so how the same way we're sending out oil rigs to the ocean everywhere, we're sending up coal mining rigs.
Mm-hmm. People have to be specially trained.
Yeah, to be specially trained to go up there, and but then you start finding monsters, and it's like, what is that? And it's just a tiger. And to us, it's a tiger. Watching the movie, it's it's a tiger. But to the people in the movie, it's like, holy crap, what is that?
That is an amazing idea.
Thank you. Someone's gonna steal it.
Well, we're just throwing out ideas.
In 5 years, we're going to see a novel, and it's going to be that. And they watch this episode of Creative Conversations of David and Donna.
Well, maybe we shouldn't post this. We've come up with some really good ideas.
Maybe we shouldn't post this. Well, that's the show. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
We'll just start over.
But this is really fun because we're just brainstorming right here how we come up with creative ideas.
Right.
Which is really great, and an important part of what we're doing here is we want to help people be creative.
Yes.
If you want to come up with some creative ideas,
you just start talking.
And let things flow through you, like we've both done right here. I like you. When I'm sitting here being confused by your idea, it's because it's a good idea, because it's making me think so badly. I have no idea what that world would be like, Donna, where we don't have ownership. Because you're right. Everything you're saying is correct.
I love it. Well, I really kind of seriously like the idea of dragons being aliens.
Me too.
I really do. And especially if they came back in a modern time. Because people would be like, wait, I thought dragons were mythical. And then, we could go back to the idea that in every culture there has been a dragon-type story. And because they truly have always been here. And the magic that we think is magic is just because they're aliens. And
it's science.
They understand powers that we don't.
Yeah, I've always thought about that. This idea of this world where magic is just science. Mm-hmm. There are these video games made by the same company called Bethesda, and they're the Elder Scrolls, which is fantasy, and there's Fallout, which is sci-fi. But there are some connections. So there's this theory that actually the fantasy series, the Elder Scrolls, takes place in the future of Fallout. And all of the magic in the Elder Scrolls is just science that got super advanced. So now they know how to do all this magic stuff, but it's just science. That's all it is, making that stuff happen. So I've always had that idea. I like that idea too, of all this mystic stuff. It's almost like setting it in reality, which is weird to say about dragons and aliens, but it's saying all this mystic stuff, it's because it's alien technology making all this stuff happen, and aliens who have these wings that can fly and all that stuff. I love creating races, my favorite thing to do when creating new things. I just love creating random characters. I play Dungeons and Dragons, and I just love creating the looks of new races and making things look different on them slightly, and learning about that. I watch documentaries about how a video game called Mass Effect was made, and they created all the alien races for it, and how they would just start with a human,
Mm-hmm.
and then edit one thing,
Yes.
and be like, well, these guys have big eyes. And the reason they have big eyes is because where they're from, their sun is extremely small.
Mm-hmm.
So their planet's very small too. But because their sun is small, they can't take in. They need to make their eyes bigger so they can absorb all
More
the
light.
light.
Yes.
Right? Just stuff like that.
Well, that's interesting, and of course, I'm always Star Trek. But every alien race on Star Trek has, a human. Well, not every, but many have human forms, and then they dress them up with some aspect of nature that we know. So if you look at all the textures on the different Klingon and different warrior type creatures, there are things that you can see, like on alligators or on tree bark or whatever. They pulled from our natural world to create the look, and it's always so interesting to me that we base aliens on us, because if it were truly alien, and there are some in the old Star Trek where there's like this boulder type thing that's alive, and they have to fix it with something that's more like cement, because that's like what it's made of. And there is in the newer series, they were trying to mine water. Actually, they were trying to transform a whole planet to make it livable for human beings, and they kept going into the water table, and they started experiencing all these technical failures, because living in the water was a completely different type of life than they even could detect. It was life, but it was not at all organic like us. So the idea of all of the aliens that you see being based on humans, to me, is kind of silly, because but it's just how we perceive life. So I mean, think of the most, like, what's the word I'm looking for? The most if it's not alive, it's what's the word for it? Like it's
inanimate.
Inanimate. That might be what I'm trying to think of. The most inanimate thing you can think of, and then we're going to create an alien out of it.
I want to do that, but just real quick, in the defense of the humanoid thing,
yes,
I think that it's sort of like all life abide by the same rules.
In our way of understanding it.
In the scientific way, like all life.
Yeah, but how do you know that on another planet our scientific ideas about life don't exist? I mean, you could apply our rules of life to fire and they would work. So, I mean,
I wouldn't say that necessarily.
No, it is. I've heard people argue it. The different thing, like you want to reproduce, you want to keep going. I mean, all the different things that define what life is for us work for fire. I mean, so it's just so fascinating to think that there would be some idea of something that has intelligence and life that has nothing to do with what we think life is. Because surely there's something bigger than our thoughts.
Well, surely there's something bigger than our thoughts, but I'm just saying that from in the defense of people making those aliens, they follow a same of things evolve, based on how they have to, and we look like what we look like and act what we act like because of things that happened that shaped us. So that's all that they did with the alien stuff, was they said, well, what shaped them differently than what shaped humans.
But they started with the humanoid form, which I'm saying is not necessarily the only form of life. That's all I'm saying.
Well, humanoid form is not the only form of life. I know that dogs look like that.
Well, correct. But I mean, it's so interesting to me that when we think about aliens of any sort, we always base it on something we know. Surely there's probably aliens sitting in this room with us right now that we just are unaware of. There's life that we can't possibly comprehend, and I think that's fun to explore.
I just happen to disagree. I think that life, I think that there is life that I think that, give humans a little credit. We've done a lot of stuff, understand a lot of stuff, and this idea that, well, if we just understood life more, then we would know that chair is alive is not.
Oh, some people do believe that, David.
I know, they're stupid.
Oh, no, you can't say that. You can't say that something you disagree with is stupid.
I think it's okay if I say that if somebody thinks that chair is alive, they're dumb. I get to say that.
Ooh.
We have big disagreements on this, I sense now.
So, okay.
All right.
Everything that creates the matter in the world that we live in comes from the same source. Mm-hmm. So how is it that you can look at us and say we're alive, but look at that and say it's not? I mean, who are you to make that judgment?
Hey, Mr. Chair, how's your day going?
Okay, so maybe it's not the same sentient being that we are. But,
it's not sentient, period.
Okay, but you can agree with me that it is made of the basic same matter that we're made of.
Yeah, everything's made of
the same matter.
All the same elements go into things, they just mix in a different way. I mean, yeah, it's all, everything everything is made out of something that's on the periodic table.
Okay.
And
everything in this planet.
Yeah, everything on this planet, yeah. And everything we've discovered. Everything
on this planet.
not just on this planet.
They've had rocks from other planets.
You have rocks from other planets. So everything that we have discovered, because if we discovered anything else on Jupiter, then we would say, oh, well, it's not an element on here. Yeah. So everything that we have discovered, because, well, I'm saying, you're not wrong. Like, we add things to the periodic table.
We do, yes, we do.
So I'm not telling you that, like, oh, well, the periodic table is that and will never change. I know the periodic table will change many, many times. We add things to the periodic table often, very often, as we discover new things.
Correct.
Which means so far, everything we've discovered so far, which there will be more. I know there will be a lot more. And there is a lot we don't know, a lot we don't understand. Everything we've discovered so far is on the periodic table, yes. So everything is made out of the same things. It's all matter and comes and must come from the same something, the same
source.
Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for.
So you still are going to argue with me that every alien has to be based on something we understand?
I don't think it needs to be based on something we understand, but I think that every alien, if we saw it, we could understand it.
All right.
If we saw it, then we could understand it. I think we could study it and understand it. Mm-hmm. That's what I think it is possible, because 50 million years ago we did not understand electricity. And we saw it, and
so it's just the next level of science is where we're headed now.
Yes, I'm just saying that everything can be understood, and that I don't think you give humans enough credit, Donna.
It has nothing to do with it. I think it has to do with, I know that as a human being I have extremely limited perception based on what is possible, from what I understand. So I think that certainly we are just one form of expression of source, and that source can certainly express itself in ways that we could never even imagine. I mean, we understand that in space there are many other solar systems and galaxies and all of that, but we have only, been able to explore the planets closest to us. There's so much beyond us that, just in the true Star Trek fashion, I believe that there are other alien races that are far more advanced than we are, and are probably nothing like us. They're just another expression of life force of the, the power, the whatever you want to call it, that just are beyond our comprehension, that have nothing to do with human beings.
So you're saying that there could be, because I know they have nothing to do with human beings. I'm just saying that all life, that so far, this has been proven to be true, all life abides by certain rules.
That we understand for this existence. I don't think you want to go beyond that. Like, this is it. We are existing, and this is where we are, and we understand what we do, and that's where it stops for you.
No, it doesn't.
I'm trying to create an alternate universe here, David. So,
We're still on alternate universes?
I think so. I think it all has to do with that. Because if you can imagine something that doesn't fit into the science that we know, then that moves us into the idea that we can write about something bigger, or something unusual, like the particles that are floating in this room that we can't see. They could possibly represent a life force that we don't know, and they're actually, always messing with us in ways that we don't understand. That'd be an amazing story. Like seeing us from the viewpoint of a minuscule, microscopic particle, and like
Horton Hears a Who.
Yes, and then inside of that they have their even smaller one. It just it's infinite. It never stops.
Mm-hmm. I've thought about that before.
Right.
It could be like, what happens when the Who hears a Who?
Yes. Yes.
And everything gets smaller and smaller and fit down the scale.
Or larger and larger. I mean, everything has. It just goes in all directions.
I've ever told you. So, there's this video game, The Sims, right? You know what The Sims is?
I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of The Sims?
I have not. I'm not a video game person.
It's like a simulation. It's like, It's where people, you ever seen like the green crystal thing that floats around, like that logo? And anyway, it's a simulation. You play and you have your Sims, and it's these people you create in this simulation. You control their lives. You're God of this world. if you send them to computer school, and you advance them far enough, they can prove they're in a simulation, and then they create their own simulation, and they play The Sims. And it's just a video game, but I think it's a funny little thing of like your Sims make their own Sims, and that little world exists there. And what if we're Sims who have Sims who have Sims
Absolutely.
who have Sims who have Sims?
So what school do we have to go to prove that we're in a simulation?
Computer science. So I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't know if we're in a simulation.
Well, we might not be. I was just proposing that as a continuation.
If we're in the simulation, do we break out of the simulation and fight? Or do we say, thank you for putting us in a simulation? If we're in a simulation, does that mean that it's like the Matrix and an actual body of life that is the real representation of us has to exist? Or are we just computer programming that goes away once the computer gets turned off?
Speaking of the Matrix, they're supposed to be making a Matrix 4. Have you heard
Yeah,
that?
I saw that. I'm okay with it only because Keanu Reeves
agreed to do it.
Yeah, and because he's made a comeback as the greatest person who's ever been alive. Everyone loves him now. Because he's been, and he was a joke for a long time after the Matrix, but he made a huge comeback with the John Wick movies, and just everything about him has now made him an A-list actor again. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very happy that they're making a Matrix 4 with this new and improved Keanu Reeves.
He's not
well, not there's a newly discovered side of Keanu Reeves that we didn't know about when they made the first Matrix.
Well, maybe then. I've always loved Keanu Reeves.
I've always loved Keanu Reeves too, but he didn't make the John Wick movies is what I'm saying.
No, I hear you. So he's got a newfound appreciation from the general public.
From the general public, yes. And he's a different person, and he's this he's reinvented himself.
Yeah, or he's brought. People have rediscovered him as what is really.
He's been rediscovered. I see it as he's reinvented himself. Because he picked different movies.
Yeah.
That put
creatively
him creatively reinvented himself and rebranded himself as he's. Well, when you think of Keanu Reeves now, as a brand, it is different than what he would have been.
You're right.
10 years ago.
I agree with that.
Of this like joke actor kind of to now being like
A-list, like you
an
said.
A-list actor. Yes. So I'm very excited about that. I would love that. They're also making a new Ghostbusters. Did you know that?
I did not.
They're making a new Ghostbusters. The son of the original director is making it.
Okay.
I don't know all the details. I believe they're ignoring that 2016 god-awful Ghostbusters movie.
I was so upset by that one.
That movie was awful.
I thought it would be so funny. It just was not at all.
I'm so happy you said that, because whenever this gets like, I don't want to get into like the politics of anything at all, but when this movie was announced, the new Ghostbusters, all of the women actors, because they were like, wow, how disrespectful to us. It's like, excuse me? So it's okay for you to make a reboot, but it's not okay for the original people to not do yours? Like,
what was disrespectful? I don't follow that.
Exactly.
No, I mean, what were they saying was disrespectful? That
they're just not doing a sequel to theirs. That instead of doing a sequel to theirs, they're going back to the original. Okay. And it's like, wow, is it because we're women? No. Because your movie sucked.
It was not.
It was not good. It was not a good movie.
And wonderful actresses. I mean, really, the cast in general was good. But
yeah,
I just
funny
watched
people.
It. I mean, with a quizzical look on my face the whole time, like, what?
Yeah, it was such a. Ugh. But they're making a new Ghostbusters movie, so that's really cool.
Are they going to have any of the original cast?
I swear I've seen like, oh yeah, Bill Murray confirmed to be part of it, but I don't want to say that because I don't know, but I'm sure. Yes, like, I think that's the whole idea. Is they're making Ghostbusters 3. They're calling it Ghostbusters 3.
Love it.
Which is really interesting because James Cameron is doing Terminator Dark Fate, and he's pretending that all of the movies after Terminator 2 didn't happen.
Well, that's fine.
They made Terminator 1, Terminator 2, and all these awful Terminator movies, and they're pretending that they didn't. He's just pretending, which I think is really interesting because we talked a few weeks ago now about Is Art a Democracy and who has control over it, and he's making this movie and just saying, nope, doesn't exist. Sorry.
Did he direct all those other ones?
No.
Okay.
He directed.
Just 1 and 2.
Just 1 and 2.
Well, then it is his. He's fine. This is his vision now. And is it going to have Linda Hamilton in it?
Yes.
Yes. I think I've seen those previews.
Yes. Right. Linda Hamilton is in it, and it's like, nope, those are the ones that didn't happen. This is the sequel to Terminator Judgment Day.
This is the real deal.
But okay, let me ask you this. If he did direct all the other Terminator movies. And he made this one and said, no, this didn't happen.
I think maybe instead of saying, no, they didn't happen, it's more like, here is a continuation or a different way to look at a continuation of the story. Because, I mean, so many stories have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Just like what we were just talking about. You have this, but then you go in and give it a slight twist or angle, and now we're going to make it go this way. You know, I really feel like that is... You're looking at a question we were going to ask. We didn't get to our questions, but we've had a great conversation.
Yeah, we have.
But, anyway, I think that it's okay to go back and do whatever you want.
I agree.
People consume, and so that'll just be a new thing to consume. I think that,
continuity is very cool and very important, but also I don't think it should be looked at so intensely and religiously, because people want to do... Unless it's something like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it's very, the whole basis of it is this is one continuous world. But, for example, the new Joker movie, have you seen anything about the Joker movie?
I have.
There's this Joker movie coming out. It has nothing to do with the Batman movies. It's just somebody wanted to make a movie and use the Joker as a way to tell their story. Nothing to do with continuity, and a lot of people are like, what? People start freaking out because they've gotten so hooked on this, it has to be in this continuity. They're like, well, they start having a panic. It's like, where does this fit in?
Yeah.
Well, how does this fit in? It's like, calm down. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. Just enjoy the movie. Yeah. And I wish people could just do that. Just enjoy the movie. It doesn't matter where it fits in. Does it freaking matter? Like, when this show called Gotham came out, it's a show about Jim Gordon, the early days of Gotham City and Batman. My friend calls me. He goes, so, wait, but how does this fit in with the Dark Knight trilogy? And I'm like, well, it doesn't. And he's like, but it's Batman. I'm like, uh-huh.
It's like, somebody else's spin.
So it has to be in the Dark Knight? No, it doesn't. No, it's just another thing. And so people start making these like, well, okay, that's Earth, that's Earth 616. That's where the Marvel movies take place, and that's where the comics take place, and the Marvel movies take place at Earth. Why does it have to be Earth with numbers? Why can't it just be this is a story and this is a story? The people start getting so because they're having these panic attacks when it doesn't all make sense in this little map. They have to map it out, and it's like, why don't you just say this is a movie I'm watching? Oh, they're referencing that thing that I liked. Cool. Right. And it'd be done with it. Why does it have to become so complicated?
Because people are complicated.
You're right. I love comic books with all of my heart. I hate the whole, multiverse stuff. Multiverse is cool, but then they start making it well, when did the story take place, and where did it take place, and what Earth number did it take place in? I'm like, what Earth number? It's a book, dude. What Earth number? Read the comic. It's a flimsy. It's made out of paper. It's words on a paper. What Earth did it take place in? None, because it's not real, dude. Because it didn't happen.
I love it.
None. Earth, none. That's where Earth, whatever Earth you're on right now, where the author wrote it down. That's where it takes place. Calm down.
Speaking of calming down, we're at our time, I think.
We are. What a wild conversation.
I told you to talk about what was on your mind.
I know.
Where we went.
Do you like this conversation?
Do I?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
I did too.
I truly did. In fact, I took the questions that we were going to tell each other, and I thought, we may not get to those. I really did have that in my head.
It's good. Really me too. Did. I do like when you challenge my perception of things. I think I'm right, but I'm okay being challenged. So, but you think you're right too.
Oh, I most certainly do. I'm not going to shove it in your face.
I'm not shoving it in your... Am I? Do you feel like I am?
No, I don't. Okay. I'm just saying I
don't feel like you are with me. I think we just say
we just have to talk about it.
We have to move on.
That's how we learn.
We're not going to change this.
We did get about 4 ideas that we need to go write down.
We do need to. I like them a lot.
I do too.
That's the magic of collaboration and just talking. That's how you share it. That's how you get your things out there. That's where inspiration comes from, which is something we talked about a couple weeks ago when we talked about how we're making our new online playwriting course, and that's something we talk about even more on the course that we're developing for you. Right. We have a lot of projects of that coming up. Please go check out our website, davidanddonnacreative.com, where you can follow all the links there and get all the information about our upcoming course, Concept the Curtain Call, Playwriting with David and Donna. You can also get 25 free tips to stay creative.
Yes.
You can also check out our brand new merchandise page that is now up today at our TeePublic store, Stay Creative. Go to our website for the links to that. Everything you ever need on our website. Also, check us out on Instagram, stay_creativedd, Twitter, stay_creativedd, and Donna, will you tell me about our Facebook page?
It's just called David Donna, and I honestly have been very busy and haven't even looked at it much. But,
that's okay.
When we get things more on track, I definitely will have a Facebook group where we can share our ideas with you and listen to your thoughts about everything we're doing, and leave you different fun ways to be creative and help you with whatever you need help with. We are going in that direction. We just are,
we are working hard for you guys.
Yes.
And if you want all the updated information on it, then check out our website. Like I said,
yes.
We will have and subscribe to our newsletter, which you can get through there by checking out the 25 Free Ways to Stay Creative. Also on our blog, we'll be posting new stuff. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter for all the updates for this online playwriting course coming up, where we will go even more in depth about the stuff we've talked about. And check out last week's podcast and the week before and the ones coming up.
Yes.
Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell you can know exactly when our new podcasts are up. Yes. Donna, any final thoughts for the audience?
I love having creative conversations. I think that is so much fun.
I love having creative conversations too, because it's like we just start pressing record on us talking.
And I think that's what we kind of had in mind when we started this whole thing.
That's exactly what I had in mind.
But it truly took us places today that I've totally never expected.
We not have unlocked. Yes,
that's right.
Our minds have been unlocked.
Yes,
by maybe by the life forms in the air that are influencing us that I just can't see right now. I don't think you're entirely wrong.
I'm so glad to know
I am open to the idea because it is freaking cool. Because there's this part in it where, so they see a giant spider. When they see its true form, they see a giant spider. But Stephen King says they only see a spider because it's the only thing they even know how to comprehend it as. It's not a spider. But that's the closest thing they got. So, anyway.
We brought it full circle.
Full circle. Thank you guys so much for listening. Donna, any more final words?
I think we can end it here, so I'll just say thank you so much for listening. This is Donna.
And David.
And thank you for listening, and stay creative.